Alright, so let's get our starter kit from this GitHub repo, which is linked in the description. And as I mentioned, we are not using Laravel starter kits, but we are using this simple one that I prepared for this series. And this is just the initial setup of a Laravel Inertia view application, and you can use it for any purpose. And it doesn't have all those components and views and controllers in a starter kit. So it doesn't have the authentication. It is just the initial setup, but we do have a Tailwind and Ziggy view installed and set up. So I thought we will use this to save ourselves from going through the initial setup. But if you want to learn how it's done, I have another series in which we go through the installation step by step, and that one is also linked in the description. So all we have to do is to clone this repo and take these steps that I have written down here. So we need to take 8 steps to get this repo up and running for development. So let's do this together. I'm going to copy this URL. Then in my terminal, I'm going to use the command git clone and then paste that URL. So this will pull in that project for us, which is called Laravel Inertia View Starter. So then we want to cd into that project. And if we take a look at the content, we can see this is just our typical Laravel project. Now we will open this with VS Code in a second, but I just want to show you what happens if you just serve this application as it is. You notice we are getting all these errors because we need to install our dependencies, our database, and migrations. So we need to, again, go back to this GitHub repo and take these steps. So first we need to install PHP dependencies and Node dependencies. So let's go back to the terminal and use composer install command to install the PHP dependencies. So as you can see, these packages were installed. Next, we want to install our Node dependencies using npm i or npm install. So when that is done, we need to create our env file and our database and then run a few artisan commands. So let's open this in VS Code and create those documents. So I can just say code dot, and now we have this in VS Code. And you notice we don't have our env document. We do have this example one, and what we can do is to copy this and then paste it in the same directory and just change the name to .env. So now we have our env file, and since we are here and creating files, let's also create our database because we don't have our database here. So in the database folder, I'm going to create a new file and call it database.sqlite. And that is, of course, because we are using SQLite as our database. Now you notice in the env document, we don't have the app key. So this will give us an error if we try to run our app. So we need to generate a new key using an artisan command. If we go back to the GitHub repo, we have these commands we need to run. So we need to migrate our database and then generate a new key, and then we can serve our application. So back to terminal, I can run php artisan migrate first. Then we can run php artisan key :generate. This will generate a key for us, and if we take a look at our env, you notice we have a new key here. And lastly, we can serve our application. So if I just say php artisan serve, and then in a new tab, we need to run npm run dev. So this is important to run because we will not be able to find the manifest document if we don't do this. So with these changes, we should be able to see our application, and here it is. We just have a simple homepage and a navigation, which is our default layout. So let's just have a quick overview of this starter kit. So as I mentioned, we don't have any controllers or logic. So in our HTTP controllers, we don't have anything. And if you take a look at resources, we have our CSS document that already has the Tailwind directives. Then in our JS folder, we have our layouts. So this is the main layout, and it is just a header and a main tag, and we have one link. So this is an Inertia link, which is imported as a global component for our view application. And next we have our pages, which is just a home page and just a p tag. So there's nothing fancy going on here. And in our app.js, which is the core of our application. So again, we go through all of this step by step in another series. But basically, we are just creating our Inertia app, and we are setting a default title. And if you notice, it says my app up here in the title, and that's coming from here. So we can dynamically change that from any component. Then we are using the resolve option to say where are our view components. So they are in the JS folder and in a pages folder. And also down here, we are specifying the default layout. So I have already imported main here, and that is basically this navigation up here. And we are just saying if there is no layout for any page or any component, use that main layout. Then we have our setup option, which is creating our view app. And I am adding Ziggy View as a plugin so that we can use the route function. And you might have seen it in the main layout. We are using that route function in the view component. And that is because of this Ziggy View. And also I'm exposing these two components, which are inertia components, to the view application so we can use it in any component without importing it. And again, you can see here I am using link, but I am not importing it in the component itself. And lastly, we have the progress bar, which will appear up here when we are submitting forms. And I set the color to white and also show the spinner to true. So going back to the directories, we also have our app.blade.php, which is the root directory. And we already have read, inertia head, and routes directives, as well as inertia within the body. So we don't have to change anything here. And in the routes folder, we have only one route, which is rendering our homepage. And lastly, in our read.config.js, we have view as a plugin. So this is our simple starter kit without all those components or views. And I thought the same amount of time that we want to spend on customizing that starter kit, we can use that time to build our own application the way we want and also learn how it's done. So of course, you are welcome to use this starter kit for any project. Now in the next video, we will go through the initial setup specifically for our project, and we will pull in a few other things that would be specific to the app we want to build. So see you at the next one.